Hey, so let's see. I was a little stiff in that last video, wasn't I? I apologize for that. And I don't know what's going on with my glasses. Some sort of weird reflection, so maybe I'll take them off. I don't want you getting frightened by the blue stuff that's happening there in some parts of the last video. So, in any case, all right, we reviewed, talked about how your readers just want to read a good essay, and then, you should spend about 10 minutes reading the passage, reviewing where you might want to go with it, and organizing your essay. Don't just jump into it. Organize, organize. And then once you've got it organized, go into it. Remember, we've been working with the idea of what I call play dirty. Philosophize and lay out your argument in the first paragraph, and then hit things like diction, imagery, tone. Don't. Diction, imagery, repetition, tone, and you should be good. In that first paragraph, no. Remember, I said that the College Board tends to go back to the same general ideas over and over again. Why? Because these are the things that affect us as human beings. So you have things like sadness. I don't know if you can see that. Sadness, death, education, nature, technology, sometimes being a good thing or a bad thing, adversity. We all go through adversity, and so it's a common thing used in passages. And in the poetry question, love. Who doesn't feel the pangs of love, right? What else? Childhood, birth, less common, but it's there sometimes. It was there with the Derek Walcott poem a few years back. War. Leadership. Sometimes poverty. And then change. Okay, so you take these, you start that first paragraph, you talk about one of these probably. Second, third, and fourth paragraphs, you talk about, you explore the arguments, using usually diction, imagery, repetition, tone, or whatever else you come with. Then you tag on a conclusion, then boom, fly. Hey, I passed the AT exam, right? Play dirty. Now, for your conclusion, it's tricky, very tricky, because sometimes no conclusion is better than a lame conclusion. I mean, if the best you're going to do is put in conclusion, your reader is usually going to be turned off. And thinking, what am I, in the 5th grade? In conclusion? Now, you don't want to do that. Your conclusion should be something that both restates what you think the argument the author was trying to make was, and then also trying to universalize that argument beyond that passage. I mean, if you can't come up with a conclusion, I think it's better to simply write, sorry, ran out of time, could not get to my conclusion. Why? Because then you leave your reader on a high note. You end that last paragraph and it's like, wow, this is fantastic. Oh, you ran out of time. That's such a shame. That's so much better than tagging on a lame conclusion where it takes your essay and then it goes down. You know what readers say when they see a lame conclusion? That's a shame. They shouldn't have done that. It weakened their essay. Now, given that you can use notes and prepared materials, things that you've done in class before, it wouldn't be a bad idea to try to work with the conclusions that we did in class. So you talk about death as your beginning, you've got that conclusion already, just tie them together, but also work on that conclusion so it's as smooth as possible. If you remember, I said conclusion should both restate the author's message and then also try to universalize beyond the passage. Why? Why universalize? Because then it's really clear that this is something that's not living separate from reality, the passage, right? It's not living separate from everything else in the world, but it's actually something that other human beings can relate to in some way. I mean, in that passage that we looked at from Cormac McCarthy's The Crossing, I mean, it's a dead wolf. And most people would probably go, why? Why is this young man burying a dead wolf? Something that's wild and ferocious, at least when it was alive. But the fact that he's burying it and doing so in a way that is careful and loving says something about life in general, right? If you remember, we've talked about this several times, the young man in that passage uses, not the young man, Cormac McCarthy uses the word cradled to explain how the young man was handling this dead wolf. And cradle is a word used with babies. It's a word that implies security, safety, and love. And so obviously there's something more happening there that you should try to point out. And so how do you universalize? Well, you talk about things that are about the same topic. So if we've got death, we maybe talk about something, maybe a large political death like Martin Luther King or Gandhi. Balance that with something else, maybe something smaller, something more intimate and known to everybody else on the face of the earth, and then bring it back to the passage. Bring it back to the passage, and you're good. So how did I phrase it? You could start it off something like, whether it be a death that affects the whole world, like those of Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, or something smaller, like the death of an animal out in the wild. In the end, Cormac McCarthy is arguing that all death must be honored in some way, no matter how large or how small. In honoring death, McCarthy is asking us to recognize that all life is precious in some way. It needs to be both celebrated and mourned, and so on down the line. Just like that. Restate and universalize. 2 examples from my death one at the extremes, because then we get that contrast and recognize something deeper about what McCarthy was saying. Go from there, boom, like I said, play dirty, and then yay, I've passed the AP exam. I think that's about it. There may be another video, but hopefully my eyes weren't too odd this time.